Ever get that feeling there's maybe more to the story with our economy than just supply and demand?
Oh, absolutely. Like, what's really going on underneath it all?
Yeah, the way we produce things, exchange them, is it all just how things are, or are there, deeper structures shaping it?
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Okay, let's do it. Because this deep dive, we're exploring a really critical take on those questions.
We are. We're looking at Critique of Political Economy by Mohamed Adel Zaki. And this isn't your standard econ textbook.
Definitely not.
Think of it more as an intellectual journey, a real deep rethink of the whole field. Zaki draws from so many thinkers, Arabic sources, international ones.
Right.
And our mission today is to really trace his unique approach through the whole book.
Yeah, just looking at the contents page tells you how ambitious it is. Part one sets the foundations, right? How politics shapes economics, the birth of social science. Then the core stuff, methodology, production, exchange, value, even these laws of motion.
And how he structures that first part is, I think, really revealing. He's not jumping straight into critiques.
No.
He's building his own foundation first,
Yeah.
asking, what are the basic conditions that even let us think about political economy this way?
Then part two, he flips it an internal critique, tackles the big names, Smith, Ricardo, Marx,
Yeah, grapples with their ideas.
and digs into different angles on surplus value.
This is where you see him really engaging with the history of economic thought. He's not just like throwing them out.
No, he's dissecting them.
Exactly, showing their strengths, but also where he sees the limits, the contradictions within their own logic.
And part three, that's the external critique, looking at how political economy grew up in Europe specifically.
The Eurocentric angle?
Right, how that influenced Marx, how it spread globally. He even compares labor and markets in pre-capitalist Europe to other places.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah, and then critiques the whole modes of production idea and talks about the Asiatic mode.
That shift to an external critique is key. Zaki's asking, can a theory born in Europe really explain everything, everywhere?
Good question.
He's pushing for a broader view, less centered on one region's history.
Then finally, part four zooms in on contemporary capitalism and the end of political economy. He tackles modern stuff, the legacy of colonialism, empires of gold and blood.
Powerful phrase.
It is. He talks about 500 years of decline, argues political economy as a critical field is maybe ending. And that chapter title, The Daily Execution of Students.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And again, drawing on this massive list of references, Arabic and others.
So that last part connects all the history and theory to right now.
Exactly.
He wants to understand our current situation and how we even think about economics today. The references just show how much homework he's done.
Absolutely. And right from the intro, Zaki says his main goal is re-examining political economy, focusing hard on the law of value. Seeing that as the key rule for production and distribution, he's really digging into the social, historical roots of it all.
Yeah, that focus on the law of value puts him squarely in that tradition, seeing labor as the source of value.
Right.
And insisting on the social and historical context means he's not looking for like abstract, timeless laws, but understanding rooted in how things actually developed.
It's interesting, too. He kicks off by crediting Antoine de Montretien with coining political economy, highlighting that split Montretien saw between running a house and managing state wealth. He even mentioned Schumpeter questioning Montretien's originality.
And disagrees with him.
Yeah, Zaki disagrees. Sticks up for Montretien.
Starting there feels like a statement, doesn't it? That history matters.
Totally.
Political economy didn't just appear. It has origins. And disagreeing with Schumpeter shows Zaki's commitment to tracking those origins carefully.
Okay, so let's dive into part one, chapter one. The political basis of the producing civilization. That title alone makes you pause.
It does.
How do political structures shape economic life? Zaki must use historical examples, right? Maybe from the Bible or Augustine, Tolstoy. Looking at power dynamics.
For sure. He's saying economics isn't separate. It's always tangled up with politics.
Right.
By using these different historical settings, he's showing this tension between power, production. Who gets what? It's ancient, it's central. Think about religious authority, like the church.
Yeah, the great schism selling indulgences.
Huge economic power, influencing land, wealth. Zaki seems to be asking, were religious explanations enough? Or did we need, social or natural ones to really understand things?
Which leads right into chapter two. Conditions for the emergence of social science. So big historical shifts, Roman expansion, European colonialism.
Right, creating the need for new ways to understand society.
He connects power shifts to how academic fields develop.
Seems like it. You encounter new cultures, you have empires to run, you need new frameworks.
Yeah.
He probably talks about things like Greek science getting translated and early critiques of religion like Feuerbach, Stirner, Strauss. They provided tools to move beyond just theology.
A big shift.
Yeah, compare that to earlier thinkers like Aquinas, or even someone like Al-Jahiz just observing trade. It's a gradual move towards social science. And Zaki probably links this to rent-seeking.
Ah, getting rich through politics.
Exactly. Plunder, grants, feudalism. That whole history of extracting wealth sets the scene for how people started analyzing economies.
Okay, chapter 3. The subject of political economy. This sounds like the core questions. How does surplus value get split?
Rent, profit, interest.
Between landowners, capitalists, finance people, and the difference between market price and natural price.
This is Zaki outlining what political economy is about. In his view, surplus value is key to understanding wealth, inequality,
Right.
and distinguishing market prices, which bounce around from a more basic natural price, hints at objective forces, which connects to his later focus on the law of value.
Then methodology in chapter 4, he uses that building analogy.
Yeah, needing tools, materials, solid ground to build knowledge. It's a neat metaphor.
He also critiques getting lost in details, citing Albatar and Galleon.
Right, suggesting a need for abstraction, for generalization, while still admitting language and ideas have limits.
Interesting point about finite categories, like colors or notes, but infinite variations within them.
Yeah, like a piano has limited keys, but endless music. Shows the power and limits of our concepts for grasping reality.
He even brings in fire, basic tools.
Foundational stuff, showing how basic material realities shape economic and social life from the very beginning.
So chapter 5 hits production and exchange, starts way back, anthropology, AO, and OCHA, tool development.
Laying the deep historical groundwork.
Then the basics for exchange. Surplus, scarcity, need.
Can't trade without those.
But then he brings in value emerging from collective labor.
Crucial point. Value isn't in the thing, it comes from the labor. It's social.
Determined by socially necessary labor time.
Exactly. He points out that people kind of understood this intuitively, linking effort and value long before formal economics.
He mentions a socially prevailing production art, like the standard way of making things.
Yeah, that's the benchmark for measuring necessary labor. Think William Petty's early ideas, or even word origins for value.
He links average wages to survival and reproduction needs.
Perpetuating the wage labor system in capitalism.
And distinguishes between using capital goods and private control of capital.
Very important distinction. Then he touches on, say, Mill, Sismondi's idea of capital multiplying itself, leading to Marx.
Right, Marx seeing capital not just as things, but a social relationship.
Between owners and workers, yeah.
Zaki puts all this in the context of the Industrial Revolution class struggle, the big question becoming, how is wealth created?
And notes the classical factors, land, labor, capital, and how capital later expanded to intangibles.
And he stresses that profit isn't just made in selling, but in production itself. Differentiates merchant and industrial capital.
That's a core Marxist idea he's highlighting. Profit originates in the production process.
So chapter 6, value, really zooms in on that idea of labor power, the ability to work as the source.
Right, it all comes back to labor power generating the value.
After setting up production and exchange, he digs deep into the theory here.
Exactly, it's the theoretical core. Human labor embodied in commodities gives them value. Understanding that is key to seeing how surplus value works under capitalism.
And part 1 wraps with chapter 7, laws of motion, pulling it all together.
Sounds like it. Describing the internal dynamics, the tendencies, maybe the contradictions within capitalism based on his value theory.
Okay, part 2, internal critique. Chapter 1 is methodological determinations, back to his own approach.
Probably reinforcing his framework before critiquing others.
Yeah.
Likely emphasizing that labor theory of value lens again.
Then chapter 2, his critique of Adam Smith, focusing on tensions like use value versus exchange value.
Yeah, money's role, Smith's analysis of wages, profit, rent.
And crucially, highlighting Smith not distinguishing buying labor versus buying labor power.
Big point. That's the distinction Marx hammers home. Capitalists buy the potential to work, the labor power.
Right.
The value created by that power, minus its cost, is the surplus value. Zaki emphasizing this signals his Marxist leaning.
Chapter 3 turns to Ricardo. His labor theory, the impact of capital.
Ricardo advanced the theory, but Zaki likely notes his struggles, like explaining equal profit rates across industries.
Or land rent based on fertility.
Differential rent, yeah.
Yeah.
Another case where value isn't just labor, but also natural factors.
And again, Zaki notes Marx built on Ricardo, but kept that labor versus labor power distinction central.
Positioning Marx as refining classical insights, yeah.
Then chapters 4, 5, 6 dive into surplus value from different angles: structural, performance-based, the rate, and sedimentation.
Sounds like the mechanics of Marx's theory.
Mm.
Structural, constant capital, variable capital, surplus value relationships.
Okay.
Performance.
Hmm.
The rate of surplus value, measuring exploitation, sedimentation, how it accumulates, gets embedded in the system.
So a multifaceted look at how profit works in this framework.
Exactly. A deep dive into that core concept within the Marxist tradition he's engaging with.
Yep. All right, part 3, external critique. Starts with an intro, signaling the shift.
Yeah, moving beyond the internal logic to look at historical, geographical limits. The Eurocentrism issue.
Chapter 2, central European components, the specific context where political economy grew, early manufacturing, merchant-producer relations.
Probably arguing that West Europe's specific path shaped the theories deeply.
And asking if they apply universally.
Right, maybe pointing out early wage labor wasn't always the dominant form. Merchant power mattered a lot, questioning the standard narrative.
Chapter 3, the European center in Marx's thought. So Zaki examines how even Marx focused heavily on Europe.
Potentially critiques Marx for maybe universalizing the European experience too much, limiting his view of capitalism elsewhere.
Chapter 4, extension of the European center, how capitalism spread via colonialism, trade.
The global impact, transforming economies, societies, unequal power dynamics.
Now chapter 5, sale of labor power and production for the market in pre-capitalist European societies. But he goes way beyond Europe here.
This sounds crucial.
Ancient Mesopotamia, Babylon, Sumer contracts, trade, private property, lending. Contrast with the Bible, wage labor in ancient Egypt, Greece.
Even with slavery.
Right. Roman Empire, guilds. Then the Abbasid and Umayyad Caliphates, Baghdad, Damascus wage labor, trade networks, manufacturing, Al-Andalus markets, Crusades impact, medieval Europe's practices too.
Wow. So he's directly challenging the idea that wage labor and markets were purely European capitalist inventions.
Seems like it.
By showing these existed elsewhere, much earlier, in sophisticated forms, he's complicating the narrative, suggesting maybe capitalism's roots are more diverse, less linear, less Eurocentric.
It really undermines that neat story of stages.
Exactly. Look at Mesopotamia's legal systems, or the Abbasid trade networks, highly developed economies.
Which connects to chapters 6 and 7, critiquing mode of production theory and the transition to laws of motion, questioning those neat stages.
Probably finding the traditional Marxist stages, feudalism, capitalism, etc., too rigid.
And focusing more on underlying dynamics, the laws of motion.
Perhaps suggesting a more continuous view of change, looking at fundamental principles operating across different societies, not just fixed stages.
In Chapter 8, the Asiatic mode of production, Marx's concept for non-European societies.
Yeah, often state-controlled economies, large irrigation, that sort of thing. It's debated, but Zaki includes it, showing his interest in diverse, pre-capitalist forms and challenging Eurocentrism again.
Okay, part 4. Contemporary capitalism and the end of political economy. Kicks off with an intro.
Setting the stage for the final critique, connecting history to the present.
Chapter 2. Empires of gold and blood. Focused on colonialism's brutality. Latin America, resource extraction, slavery.
Absolutely. He's linking that violent history directly to capital accumulation. Isabella's decree, forced labor.
Showing capitalism's foundations weren't peaceful.
Not at all. Deeply tied to conquest, slavery, suffering, with lasting global consequences for wealth distribution.
Chapter 3 follows with 500 years of decline. His take on the long-term fallout, uneven development, inequality.
Likely arguing those historical processes still shape today's global economy, maybe leading to decline in some aspects or regions.
Chapter 4. The end of political economy. Here he argues the field lost its critical edge.
Yeah, becoming more technical, dominated by institutions like the IMF, World Bank, echoing Mandel and others.
Moving from utility theory to neoclassical economics.
And avoiding the tough questions about power, production, distribution, the kind Zaki wants to ask.
He's saying mainstream economics dropped the ball on critical analysis.
Pretty much. That the focus on models and efficiency misses the deeper social relations. Following people like Amin, Nabulsi, arguing it's a decline from classical political economy's critical spirit.
Which brings us to Chapter 5's title, The Daily Execution of Students. A metaphor, obviously.
A harsh one.
Critiquing economic education for being too narrow, ahistorical, focusing only on neoclassical stuff, markets.
And neglecting production, distribution, history of thought.
Exactly.
So he believes students are being, like, intellectually starved. Given tools, but denied a full understanding of how economies really work, the power dynamics involved.
And then the references Arabic, foreign, showing the immense scholarship.
Speaks volumes. It shows his critique is grounded in broad engagement with many traditions, not just off-the-cuff remarks.
So, wrapping up this look at Zaki's critique of political economy, it's a huge undertaking.
Definitely. Comprehensive, challenging.
He consistently hammers home the need for historical context, understanding social relations, and the law of value.
And his engagement with classical and Marxist thought, internally and externally, offers a real alternative perspective.
Ultimately, his work pushes you, the listener, to be more critical, more historically aware about economics.
Yeah, look beyond just markets. See the structures of production, power, distribution underneath. And remember, theories themselves have histories, contexts. They aren't neutral.
It really does make you think, how much does our understanding depend on the lens we use? What happens if we step back, consider those deeper forces Zaki points to? Maybe it's worth revisiting those foundational questions ourselves.